The Texas sun hung low and merciless over the stretch of cracked asphalt that folks still called Route 66, though most of the old road had been swallowed by time and newer highways. Heat shimmered off the pavement in waves, distorting the horizon where the desert met the sky in a hazy blur of burnt orange and faded blue. Harlan Vance's midnight black F-350 kicked up a plume of red dust as it pulled off onto the shoulder, the chrome gleaming even through the dirt. The truck bed carried a horse trailer, expensive, custom-made, with the Vance Ranch logo painted in gold on both sides. Harlan cut the engine and stepped out, his ostrich-skin boots crunching on the gravel. His Stetson hat, worth more than most folks in Hope's Crossing made in a month, sat perfectly positioned on his silver-streaked hair. "Get her out," he barked to the two ranch hands who'd followed in a second truck. Inside the trailer, a chestnut quarter-horse mare shifted nervously, her right front leg held at an awkward angle. Her coat, once gleaming like polished mahogany, was now dull with sweat and anxiety. The brand on her flank, a stylized V enclosed in a circle, marked her as Vance property, though she'd been known around the ranch simply as Hope. "Boss, you sure about this?" The younger hand, Miguel, hesitated at the trailer's gate. Doc Higgins said with time and proper care, "Did I ask for your opinion?" Harlan's voice could freeze water in July. "A lame horse is a useless horse. She can't work cattle, can't compete, can't even carry her own weight without limping like a three-legged dog. I'm not running a charity for crippled animals." The mare whinnied as they led her down the ramp, her injured leg barely touching the ground. Her dark eyes were wide with confusion and pain, nostrils flaring as she tried to understand why her world had suddenly become this desolate stretch of nothing. "Leave her," Harlan ordered, already heading back to his truck. "Nature will take its course." "But boss," I said, "leave her." Harlan slammed the truck door. "And if either of you mention this to anyone, you'll be looking for new jobs. Clear." Miguel and the other hand exchanged troubled glances, but nodded. They'd seen Harlan's ruthless side before. It was how he built the biggest ranch operation in 3 counties. Sentiment was for the weak, he always said. In the ranching business, you couldn't afford to get attached. The trucks roared back to life, spraying gravel as they pulled back onto the highway. Hope stood alone on the roadside, her head low, watching the only world she'd known disappear in a cloud of dust. She tried to take a step and stumbled, nearly falling. A sound emerged from her throat, part whinny, part something more plaintive, like a question asked to an empty sky. The sun continued its descent, painting the desert in shades of copper and rust. Hope hobbled toward a cluster of scraggly mesquite trees, seeking whatever shade she could find. Nearby, barely visible through the heat haze, stood the skeletal remains of an old cattle barn, its weathered wood bleached gray by decades of sun and wind. The structure had been abandoned long ago, back when the old highway still meant something, back when Hope's Crossing had been more than just a dot on a map that travelers passed through without stopping. Inside that barn, hidden in the hayloft where the roof still held, a pair of watchful eyes had seen everything. Billy Thornton had learned early in his 12 years that the world wasn't built for kids like him. No parents. His mother had died when he was 6, his father a mystery she'd never talked about, and no place to call home except whatever shelter he could find. The state had tried placing him in foster care 3 times, but Billy had a talent for running away. The group homes were worse. Too many rules, too many other kids fighting for too little attention. At least on his own, he was free. He'd been squatting in the old barn for nearly 2 weeks now, ever since he'd jumped off a freight train that had slowed near Hope's Crossing. The town wasn't much, a main street with a handful of shops, a gas station, a diner, and about 300 souls who mostly kept to themselves. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, which meant Billy had to be careful. A kid living alone attracted attention, and attention meant questions, and questions meant social services. From his perch in the hayloft, Billy had watched the whole scene unfold. He'd seen the fancy trucks, heard the raised voices, watched them abandon the horse like it was nothing more than a broken-down washing machine. His chest had tightened with a familiar anger, the same feeling he got whenever he saw people throw away things that still had value, still had life left in them. As darkness fell, Billy climbed down from the loft. He was small for his age, all wiry muscle and sharp angles, with shaggy brown hair that hadn't seen scissors in months, and eyes that had seen too much. His jeans were 2 sizes too big, held up with a rope belt, and his boots, scavenged from a thrift store donation bin, were scuffed and mismatched. He approached the horse slowly, speaking in the soft voice he used when trying not to scare away the stray dogs he sometimes shared his food with. "Hey there, girl. I know. They left you too, huh?" Hope's ears swiveled toward him. She was thirsty, exhausted, and confused, but something in the boy's voice, a gentleness that belied his rough appearance, made her hold still rather than shy away. Billy knew next to nothing about horses. He'd seen them in movies, ridden a pony once at a county fair when he was small enough to still believe the world was good. But as he looked at this creature, at the defeat in her stance and the pain in her eyes, he recognized something familiar. She was discarded, unwanted, left behind, just like him. "I don't have much," he told her, "but what I got, I'll share." "Deal." The horse didn't answer, of course, but when Billy slowly extended his hand, she lowered her head and allowed his fingers to touch her dusty muzzle. Her breath was warm and slightly sweet, like dried grass and summer rain. Billy had $37.18 to his name, money scraped together from returning bottles, helping old Mrs. Shouldn't carry groceries, and spending 6 hours picking pecans for a farmer who'd paid him in cash and hadn't asked questions. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. "First thing," he said, more to himself than the horse, "is water." There was an old hand pump behind the barn, rusty but functional. Billy had been using it himself, though the water came out brown for the first few minutes of pumping. He grabbed an old metal bucket he'd found. It had a dent in the side, but held water, and started pumping with both hands. His arms ached by the time the bucket was half full, but he carried it carefully to where Hope stood. She drank desperately, draining the bucket in what seemed like seconds. Billy made 3 more trips, each time pumping until his shoulders burned and his hands blistered. Only when Hope finally raised her head and stopped drinking did he allow himself to rest. "Okay," he said, sitting in the dirt beside her. "Okay, we're gonna figure this out. You and me. We're gonna figure it out." The stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky, pinpricks of light in an endless expanse of black. Billy leaned against the barn wall, watching the horse as she stood with her head low, her injured leg held carefully off the ground. He should have been thinking about practical things, how to feed her, where to keep her hidden, what to do about her injured leg. Instead, he found himself thinking about the name on her halter, embroidered in fading thread. Hope. "Hope," he said aloud, trying it out. The word felt strange in his mouth. Hope was something he'd stopped allowing himself a long time ago. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you hurt. But as he looked at the mare, at the way she'd let him touch her despite her fear and pain, he thought maybe, just maybe, Hope was worth the risk. The first week was the hardest. Billy knew that keeping Hope hidden would be impossible if she stayed near the barn, so in the cool hours before dawn, he led her deeper into the property, to where an old cattle pen still stood behind a copse of cottonwood trees. The fence was mostly intact, and there was even a lean-to that could provide some shade from the brutal afternoon sun. Getting her there was an ordeal. Every step was agony for Hope, and twice she nearly collapsed. Billy found himself talking to her constantly, a steady stream of reassurance and encouragement that he'd never offered another living soul. "Come on, girl. Just a little further. You can do it. I know it hurts, but we're almost there. Almost home." Home. The word caught in his throat. He'd never had one of those, not really. But maybe they could build something here, in this forgotten corner of a forgotten place. Once Hope was settled, Billy faced his next problem: food. The mare needed hay, grain, something more substantial than the dry grass growing in patches around the pen. And that required money he didn't have. Hope's Crossing had a feed store on the edge of town, run by a weathered man everyone called Old Man Miller. The store was a ramshackle building that seemed to lean slightly to the left, its wooden sign faded almost to illegibility. But inside, it smelled like molasses and leather and honest work, smells that made Billy's chest ache with a longing he couldn't quite name. Miller looked up from behind the counter as Billy entered, his rheumy eyes taking in the boy's 2 big clothes and wary expression. "Help you, son." Billy swallowed. He'd prepared a story, but standing here under Miller's patient gaze, the lies evaporated. "I need some hay. And maybe some grain. If you have any that's not too expensive." "Got a horse, do you?" The question was casual, but Billy felt his defenses slam into place. Just helping someone out, doing chores. Miller studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Uh-huh. Well, a bale of hay runs about $15. Grains more, depending on what kind you need. He paused. You got $15, son? Billy's hand went to his pocket, where his remaining money lived. $23 now, after buying himself a can of beans and a loaf of bread. He could afford one bale. Maybe two, if he skipped eating for a few days. I can work for it, he said instead. I can sweep, or move things, or... Got a broom in the back, Miller interrupted. Whole place needs sweeping. Do that. Maybe organize the grain bags in the storeroom, and I'll give you a bale and a small bag of sweet feed. Deal. Billy's eyes went wide. Really? Do I look like a man who jokes about manual labor? But there was a hint of a smile in Miller's weathered face. Get to work, boy. Daylight's burning. Billy worked harder than he'd ever worked in his life. He swept every inch of the store, organized the storeroom until the bags were stacked in neat rows sorted by type, cleaned out the mouse droppings from the back corner, and even wiped down the front windows until they sparkled. When he was done, Miller inspected his work with a critical eye, then grunted in approval. You do good work. What's your name, son? Billy, sir. Well, Billy, you need more hay later this week. You come back. Always got work needs doing. Miller helped him load a bale onto an old dolly. This horse you're not taking care of. She better be worth all this effort. She is, Billy said with a certainty that surprised even himself. She really is. Getting the hay and grain back to Hope's pen required creativity. Billy couldn't exactly walk through town pushing a dolly loaded with feed without attracting attention. So he waited until dusk, then took a roundabout route that added an extra mile to the journey. His arms were trembling by the time he finally dropped the bale beside the lean-to, but the sight of Hope's ears pricking forward at the smell made every aching muscle worth it. He broke open the bale, spreading the hay in the pen. Hope approached cautiously, then began eating with an eagerness that told Billy she'd been hungrier than he'd realized. He poured a small amount of the sweet feed into another bucket he'd scavenged, just a handful, the way Miller had instructed, since too much could make a horse sick. As Hope ate, Billy examined her injured leg more carefully. The swelling had gone down slightly since that first night, but the leg was still warm to the touch, and she flinched when he probed gently around the joint. He wished he knew more about horses, about healing, about anything that might help her. That's when he remembered the old woman. He'd seen her around town, a tall, ramrod-straight figure who walked with a cane more out of habit than necessity. She lived in a small house at the end of Mesquite Street, with a porch where she sat most evenings in a rocking chair, watching the world go by with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Billy had noticed her garden was immaculate, and she kept a few chickens in a coop out back. But what had caught his attention was the faded photograph he'd glimpsed through her window one day when passing by. A younger version of the woman, standing beside a magnificent Palomino horse, trophy in hand. If anyone in Hope's Crossing knew about horses, it would be her. The next morning, Billy found himself standing at the gate of Widow Martha's property, heart hammering in his chest. The house was small but well-maintained, painted a cheerful yellow that stood out against the dusty browns and faded reds of the surrounding buildings. Wind chimes made of old horseshoes hung from the porch, creating a gentle melody in the morning breeze. Before he could lose his nerve, Billy pushed open the gate and walked up the path. He was raising his hand to knock when the door opened, revealing Martha herself. Up close, she was even more formidable, easily 6 feet tall, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes the color of slate. She wore jeans and a faded work shirt, and her hands, Billy noticed, were strong and scarred from years of hard work. Well, she said, her voice like gravel and honey. You going to stand there gawking, or you got something to say, boy? Billy's carefully prepared speech evaporated. I need help. Please. Martha's eyes narrowed. Help with what? A horse. She's hurt. Her leg. I'm trying to take care of her, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I thought maybe. He trailed off, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he must sound. You thought maybe an old woman you've never spoken to would just drop everything to help some scrawny kid with a horse. But there was something in her expression, curiosity, maybe, or the ghost of old memories. This horse. Where'd you get it? Billy hesitated. Someone left her. On the side of the road. Just left her there to die. Something flickered across Martha's face. Anger, or maybe pain. She was quiet for a long moment, and Billy was sure she was going to send him away. Then she sighed, a sound like wind through canyon rocks. Show me. Martha said nothing during the walk to the pen, her long strides forcing Billy to almost jog to keep up. But when they arrived and she laid eyes on Hope, her entire demeanor changed. She approached the mare slowly, murmuring in a low voice Billy couldn't quite make out. Hope, who'd been skittish around everyone except Billy, allowed Martha to run her hands along her neck, her back, down the injured leg. Quarter horse, Martha said finally. Good bloodlines, by the look of her. Someone spent money on this mare. Her fingers probed the swollen joint carefully. Looks like a bowed tendon. Seen it 100 times. Painful. Takes time to heal, but not career-ending if treated right. She straightened, fixing Billy with a penetrating stare. You know who she belongs to? Billy shifted uncomfortably. She's mine now. Finders keepers. That's not how the law works, boy. The law didn't care enough to stop someone from dumping her like garbage. The words burst out before Billy could stop them, sharp with all the injustice he'd been carrying. She's hurt and scared, and whoever owned her just threw her away. So yeah, she's mine now. Mine to take care of, mine to protect. And I'm not letting anyone take her away. Martha studied him for a long moment, and Billy braced himself for a lecture about property rights and theft, and all the legal reasons why he was wrong. Instead, she nodded slowly. You know what you've taken on? Horse this hurt needs constant care. Needs her bandages changed, needs anti-inflammatory medication, needs exercise but not too much, needs the right feed. You got money for all that. I'll work for it. I'll do whatever it takes. Uh-huh. Martha looked back at Hope, and something in her expression softened. Just a fraction, just enough for Billy to see the woman she'd been before whatever had hardened her. My late husband, Caleb, he was a horseman, best in 3 states. Could gentle the wildest Mustang, could take a broken-down nag and turn it into a champion. Built up the finest training stable this town ever saw. She paused, lost in memory. Then he died, and the bank took the ranch, and the horses got sold off to pay debts. That was 15 years ago. I'm sorry, Billy said quietly. Don't be sorry. Be ready to work. Martha turned to face him fully. I'll help you with this mare. I'll teach you what you need to know. But you put in the effort, you follow my instructions exactly, and you don't quit when it gets hard. Because it will get hard, boy. Nursing an injured horse back to health is a marathon, not a sprint. You understand. Billy nodded so hard, he nearly gave himself whiplash. Yes, ma'am. I understand. I won't quit. I promise. We'll see. But there was the faintest hint of approval in her voice. First thing, this pen won't do. Ground's too hard, not enough shelter. You're going to need proper stabling. I don't have. My old chicken coop, Martha interrupted. Been empty since the last hen died 2 months back. Big enough for a horse, good roof, dirt floor that's softer on the legs. You can move her there, keep her close so I can supervise her care. You'd let me do that? Martha's expression was stern. I'd be letting you work your behind off in exchange for space and knowledge. Don't confuse kindness with charity. You'll earn every bit of help I give you. Now come on, we've got work to do. Martha's converted chicken coop was, as promised, spacious enough for Hope, with thick adobe walls that kept the worst of the heat at bay and a solid roof that didn't leak. Billy spent 2 entire days cleaning it out under Martha's exacting supervision, scrubbing every surface, laying down fresh straw, repairing the gate hinges, and reinforcing the fence. A horse's environment is half the battle, Martha lectured as Billy worked. Clean, dry, safe. That's not negotiable. You start cutting corners on the basics, you'll pay for it later. Moving Hope to her new home was easier said than done. The mare had grown comfortable in her pen, and the 3-block journey to Martha's property meant leading her through the edge of town. Billy wanted to wait until dark, but Martha insisted they do it in broad daylight. You're not doing anything wrong, she said firmly. You hold your head up and walk that horse like you own her. Because you do, far as I'm concerned. So Billy led Hope down the dusty streets of Hope's Crossing, with Martha walking beside them, her cane tapping a steady rhythm on the packed earth. People stared, of course they did. Billy recognized some of them. Mrs. Chun from the market, the mechanics from the garage, a cluster of kids his own age who'd never given him the time of day. One of them, a stocky boy with sun-bleached hair named Tommy, called out from across the street. "Hey, look, it's the dumpster kid playing cowboy." His friends laughed, but Billy kept walking, eyes fixed straight ahead. He felt his face burning, felt the old familiar urge to run, to hide, to make himself invisible. But Hope walked beside him, her trust evident in the way she stayed close, and Martha's presence on his other side was solid as oak. "Keep walking," Martha murmured. "Let them talk. Words only have the power you give them." By the time they reached Martha's property, Billy's hands were shaking, but they'd made it. Hope settled into her new stall with visible relief, immediately investigating the fresh hay Martha had laid out. "Good," Martha said with satisfaction. "Now the real work begins." Over the following weeks, Billy received an education that no school could have provided. Martha was a demanding teacher, accepting nothing less than his complete attention and effort. She taught him how to clean Hope's hooves properly, how to check her teeth, how to recognize the signs of colic or infection. She showed him how to wrap the injured leg with standing bandages, how to apply poultices made from herbs she grew in her garden. "Comfrey," she explained, crushing the leaves with practiced hands, "reduces swelling, promotes healing." Caleb swore by it. "And arnica, see these flowers? Good for bruises and inflammation." She taught him how to groom Hope, not just for appearance but for health, how to use a curry comb to loosen dirt and stimulate circulation, how to brush in the direction of hair growth, how to clean her face with a soft cloth. "Grooming isn't vanity," Martha said. "It's communication. You learn her body, learn what's normal, learn to spot problems early, and she learns to trust your touch." But perhaps most importantly, Martha taught Billy about patience. "A horse's healing timeline is its own," she said one afternoon as they watched Hope walk slowly around the small paddock behind the coop. "You can't rush it, can't force it. You can only provide the right conditions and let nature do its work." Billy came to Martha's house every morning before dawn and didn't leave until after dark. He mucked out Hope's stall, changed her water, measured out her feed according to Martha's precise instructions. He walked her slowly around the paddock, encouraging her to use the injured leg but not overdo it. He learned to read her moods, when she was uncomfortable, when she was tired, when she was feeling good enough to be playful. And in between the horse care, Martha put him to work on her property. He repaired fence posts, weeded her garden, painted her porch, fixed the loose shingles on her roof. She paid him in meals, real, home-cooked food that filled his belly in a way the cheap bread and canned beans never had, and in knowledge. Sometimes, in the evenings after the work was done, they'd sit on Martha's porch and she'd tell stories about the old days, about her husband Caleb and the horses they'd trained together, about competitions and ranch work and the language of trust between human and horse. "Caleb used to say that a horse is a mirror," she told Billy one night, the sky above them turning deep purple as the sun disappeared. "They reflect what you give them. You give them fear, they'll be fearful. You give them impatience, they'll be anxious. But you give them consistency, calmness, trust, they'll give it back tenfold." Billy thought about that as he worked with Hope. He'd never been calm, never been consistent. His whole life had been chaos and uncertainty, one crisis after another. But with Hope, he tried. He kept his voice low and steady even when he was frustrated. He maintained the same routine every day, the same feeding times, the same grooming order, the same gentle touch. And slowly, he began to see what Martha meant. Hope would nicker when she heard his footsteps in the morning. She'd rest her head against his chest while he groomed her, eyes half closed in contentment. She'd follow him around the paddock without a lead rope, trusting him completely. "She's looking better," Martha observed one morning, watching Hope walk with noticeably less limping. Legs responding to treatment. "You've done good work, Billy." The praise, rare and hard-earned, made Billy's chest swell with a pride he'd never felt before. But it was more than pride. It was purpose. For the first time in his life, he was part of something bigger than survival. He was helping something heal, watching it grow stronger day by day. He mattered. But of course, nothing good lasts forever. Billy had learned that lesson early. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Billy was in Hope's stall, wrapping her leg with fresh bandages while Martha supervised from the doorway. They didn't hear the truck pull up out front, didn't hear the footsteps approaching until a shadow fell across the open doorway. Well, looks like I found my missing property." Billy's hands froze. He knew that voice. He'd heard it that first night. sharp with contempt as it ordered Hope's abandonment. Slowly, he turned to find Harlan Vance standing in the doorway, flanked by the same two ranch hands who'd helped dump Hope. Harlan was dressed like he was heading to a business meeting, pressed jeans with a crease sharp enough to cut, a white shirt with pearl snap buttons, that expensive Stetson hat. His boots probably cost more than everything Billy owned combined. He looked at Hope with the calculating eye of someone assessing an asset's value. Then his gaze shifted to Billy with thinly veiled disgust. "You're the little thief who stole my horse." "He didn't steal anything," Martha said, her voice cold as winter iron. "He found an injured animal abandoned by the roadside and provided care for it. That's called compassion, Harlan. You should try it sometime." Harlan's jaw tightened at Martha's tone, but he kept his focus on Billy. "That mare is registered in my name. She's branded with my ranch mark. Legally, she's mine, and this boy here is guilty of theft. I could have him arrested." "Then do it," Billy said, surprising himself with the steadiness of his voice. He stood up, placing himself between Harlan and Hope. "Call the sheriff. Let's see what he thinks about a man who dumps an injured horse on the side of the road and drives away." Something flickered in Harlan's eyes. Irritation, maybe, or grudging respect for Billy's defiance. The horse was lame and useless. I had every right to dispose of my own property. Dispose of. Billy felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. "She's not trash. She's not a broken tool you can just throw away. She's alive. She feels pain. She feels fear. And you didn't just get rid of her. You sentenced her to die. That's the ranching business, kid. Sentimental attachment to animals is a luxury I can't afford." "No," Martha interjected, her voice sharp as a whip crack. "That's cowardice. Caleb ran one of the biggest operations in this county, and he never, not once, abandoned an animal that could be helped. Real ranchers understand that their animals aren't just tools, they're partners. They treat them with dignity, even at the end." Harlan's face flushed with anger. "Don't you lecture me about ranching, Martha. Your husband's operation went bankrupt, if I recall. Mine is thriving. I make hard decisions that keep me profitable. And what kind of profit will you make when the whole town knows what kind of man you are?" Martha shot back. "When everyone hears how Harlan Vance abandons injured horses like roadside trash." For a moment, Billy thought Harlan might explode. His hands clenched into fists, his face going dark with rage. But then he seemed to get control of himself, his expression smoothing into cold calculation. "I don't need the town's approval. I need my property back." He nodded to his ranch hands. "Miguel, get the horse. We're leaving." "No." Billy's shout startled even himself. He spread his arms, blocking Miguel's approach. "You're not taking her. Boy, get out of the way. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me more than it concerns you. I'm the one who found her when she was dying of thirst. I'm the one who's been taking care of her every single day. I'm the one who," his voice cracked, thick with emotion. "I'm the one who loves her." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Such a simple word, such a powerful truth. Harlan stared at Billy for a long moment, something unreadable crossing his features. Then his expression hardened again. "Love doesn't change the law. Miguel, I said get the horse." Miguel stepped forward reluctantly, but before he could reach Hope, Martha moved to stand beside Billy, her cane planted firmly in the ground. "You'll have to go through both of us, Harlan. Don't be ridiculous, Martha. I've never been more serious in my life." Martha's voice was steel. "This boy has put in weeks of hard work rehabilitating a horse you threw away. He's earned more right to her than you ever had. That's not how property rights work." "Then change them," Billy shouted. "Make a new law that says people who abandon animals lose their rights. Make a law that says caring for something gives you more claim than a piece of paper." "That's not." Harlan started, but Billy cut him off. "You don't want her. You never wanted her. She's just a piece of property you're too proud to give up because some dumpster kid dared to save her." Tears were streaming down Billy's face now, but he didn't care. "Well, you know what? I am a dumpster kid. I've spent my whole life being thrown away, just like you threw away Hope. And maybe I don't have money or a big ranch or fancy boots, but I know what it means to be left behind. And I swore, that I wouldn't let it happen to her." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the wind seemed to have stopped, holding its breath. Harlan looked at Billy, really looked at him, for the first time. At his worn-out clothes and too thin frame, at the determination burning in his eyes, at the fierce protectiveness in the way he stood between a powerful man and a wounded animal. Something in Harlan's expression shifted, some long-buried memory surfacing. "How old are you, boy?" he asked quietly. Billy wiped his eyes. 12. Harlan was quiet for another long moment. Then, "Miguel. Back to the truck." "But boss." "I said back to the truck." Harlan's voice was firm, but lacked its earlier edge. He looked at Hope, at the way she stood close to Billy, ears pricked forward, protective. The horse is healing well?" Martha nodded stiffly. "She's responding to treatment. The leg should make a full recovery." "Because of him?" Harlan gestured to Billy. "Because of him," Martha confirmed. "He's worked harder than most adults I know. Hasn't missed a single day of care." Harlan took off his Stetson, ran a hand through his hair, then placed the hat back on his head. "I'll be back," he said finally, not looking at Billy. "This isn't over." He turned and walked away, his ranch hands following. They climbed into the truck and drove off, leaving only dust in their wake. Billy's legs gave out, and he sank to the ground, his whole body shaking. Hope lowered her head, nuzzling his hair gently, as if trying to comfort him. Martha placed a weathered hand on his shoulder. "You did good, Billy. Real good." "He's going to take her away," Billy whispered. "He's going to come back with the law and take her away." "Maybe. Maybe not." Martha squeezed his shoulder. "But whatever happens, you stood up for what's right. You fought for something you love. That takes more courage than most people ever find." Billy looked up at Hope, at the mare who'd somehow become the center of his world, and wondered if courage would be enough. Word spread through Hope's crossing like wildfire through dry grass. By sunset, half the town knew about the confrontation between Billy and Harlan Vance. By the next morning, everyone knew, and opinions were sharply divided. In the diner on Main Street, arguments broke out over coffee and eggs. "Law's the law," insisted Frank Morrison, who ran the hardware store. "Boy took something that didn't belong to him. Doesn't matter if his intentions were good. Law's also supposed to protect animals from cruelty," countered Sarah Chun, the grocer. "Abandoning an injured horse counts as cruelty in my book." "Harlan Vance keeps this town alive," someone else chimed in. "His ranch employs half the folks here. You really want to pick a fight with him over a horse and some runaway kid?" But there were others who saw it differently. Working folks who remembered being down on their luck, who'd once relied on the kindness of strangers. People who'd seen Billy working odd jobs around town, always polite, always giving his best effort. And people who remembered Martha's husband Caleb, who'd been respected by everyone and who'd taught that animals deserved dignity. Tommy, the boy who'd mocked Billy in the street, found himself in an uncomfortable position. His friends were still making jokes about the dumpster kid, but Tommy couldn't get the image out of his head. Billy standing there in front of that horse, tears streaming down his face, refusing to back down even when facing a man who could crush him like a bug. "I don't know," Tommy said to his friends as they hung around the gas station. "Maybe we've been wrong about him." "About who?" "The vagrant kid." His friend Cody scoffed. "Come on, Tommy. He's a nobody. He saved that horse's life. Vance was just going to let it die. So what? It's Vance's horse to do with what he wants." "Is it though?" Tommy thought about his own dog, Buster, who'd been with him since he was 7. If Buster got hurt, would it be okay for someone to just abandon him? I mean, when does something stop being property and start being, I don't know, a responsibility? His friends looked at him like he'd grown a second head. But the question stuck with Tommy, gnawing at him through the day and into the evening. Billy tried to maintain his routine, but everything felt fragile now, like a soap bubble that could pop at any moment. Every time a vehicle drove past Martha's house, he tensed, expecting to see Harlan's truck or a sheriff's car. But days passed, and nothing happened. Hope continued to improve. The swelling in her leg had gone down significantly, and she could walk without limping if she took it slow. Martha started introducing more structured exercise, walking in figure eights, backing up on command, standing quietly while Billy draped a saddle blanket over her back. "She's not ready to be ridden yet," Martha cautioned. "Won't be for another few months, if ever. But we're building her strength back, building her confidence." On the 5th day after Harlan's visit, Old Man Miller stopped by with his truck loaded with feed bags. He'd been delivering to Martha for years, but this time he lingered, watching Billy work with Hope in the small paddock. "Heard about your trouble with Vance," Miller said, leaning against the fence. Billy's hands stilled on the brush he was using. Yes, sir. Heard you stood up to him. Refused to back down. I just did what needed doing. Miller was quiet for a moment. You know, I had a son once. Would have been about your age now. Died when he was 6. Fever the doctors couldn't cure. Smart kid. Stubborn as hell. He smiled faintly at the memory. Would have liked him to grow up to be someone like you. Someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. Billy didn't know what to say to that. Miller nodded to himself, then reached into his truck and pulled out 2 more bags of sweet feed. Consider this an investment, he said, dropping them by the fence. In a boy and a horse who both deserve a fighting chance. Mr. Miller, I can't. You can, and you will. And when you're back on your feet, maybe you'll remember to help some other kid who needs it. He climbed back into his truck. That's how communities work, son. We take care of each other. As Miller drove away, Billy felt something crack open in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Not charity, not pity, something better. Solidarity. The turning point came on a Saturday, market day in Hope's Crossing. Twice a month, the town set up a small market in the plaza next to the old courthouse, where local farmers and craftspeople sold their goods. It was usually a quiet affair, a chance for neighbors to catch up over fresh vegetables and homemade preserves. Martha had been planning to take Hope to the market for weeks, before the confrontation with Harlan. She needs socialization, Martha had explained. Needs to be around people and noise, to rebuild her confidence in new environments. Billy had wanted to cancel, to keep Hope hidden and safe. But Martha insisted. Hiding accomplishes nothing. If Harlan wants to take her through legal means, he'll find a way regardless of where she is. But if this town sees what you've accomplished, sees how far she's come, well, that might make a difference. So that Saturday morning, Billy led Hope into town, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. The market was already bustling, maybe 50 people milling around the dozen or so stalls. Conversations faltered as Billy appeared, leading the chestnut mare who walked beside him with quiet dignity. He'd spent the morning grooming her until she shone, her coat gleaming like polished wood in the sunlight. Her mane and tail were brushed smooth, and Martha had provided a new halter to replace the worn one she'd arrived with. The limp was barely noticeable now, just a slight hitch in her step that you wouldn't see unless you were looking for it. Martha had set up a small demonstration area, marked off with rope borrowed from Miller's store. The plan was simple: show what Hope could do, demonstrate her recovery, her responsiveness, her potential. Billy's hands were shaking as he led Hope into the center of the demonstration area. Half the town was watching now, conversations dying to silence. He could feel their eyes on him, judging, assessing, wondering. Martha stood at the edge of the ring, her voice carrying clearly. Most of you know this horse. She was abandoned on Route 66 6 weeks ago, left to die from an injured leg and neglect. This young man, Billy, found her and decided she was worth saving. What you're about to see is the result of dedication, hard work, and the kind of compassion this town was built on. Billy started with the basics, leading Hope through a series of turns, demonstrating how responsive she was to his cues. Then, following Martha's instructions, he asked Hope to back up, to side pass, to stand perfectly still while he walked around her. The mare performed flawlessly, her attention completely focused on Billy. There was something almost beautiful about it, the silent communication between boy and horse, built on trust and countless hours of patient work. Then came the final demonstration. Martha had set up a series of barrels in a pattern, not for speed, but for precision. Billy was supposed to lead Hope through them, showing her agility and control. But as he approached the barrels, Billy made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of using the lead rope, he unclipped it, holding it loosely in his hand. Then he started walking through the pattern alone. Hope followed him. Without a lead, without any physical connection, the mare walked beside Billy, matching his pace perfectly. When he turned, she turned. When he stopped, she stopped. They moved through the barrel pattern like dancers, completely in sync. Someone in the crowd gasped. Someone else started clapping. Billy completed the pattern and turned to face the crowd, Hope standing beside him, her head held high. He was breathing hard, adrenaline and emotion making his voice shake when he spoke. She was supposed to be worthless. That's what I heard someone say. Worthless and useless. But look at her. She's not worthless. She never was. He swallowed hard, finding courage in Hope's steady presence. I know I'm just some kid. I know I don't have a ranch or money or even a real home. But I know about being thrown away. I know what it's like when people decide you're not worth the effort. And I know that it's wrong. He paused, his hand resting on Hope's neck. The mayor leaned into his touch, completely trusting. Maybe legally she's not mine. Maybe I don't have the right paperwork or the right last name or the right anything. But I love her. I'd do anything for her. And I'm asking you, all of you, to help us. Because if we let powerful people throw away lives just because they're inconvenient, what kind of town are we? What kind of people are we? The silence that followed felt endless. Billy stood there, exposed and vulnerable, waiting for rejection. Then Tommy stepped forward. The boy who'd mocked him, who'd called him dumpster kid. He walked right up to Billy, looked him in the eye, and said, "I'm sorry. For all the stuff I said before. It was wrong." He turned to face the crowd. "Billy's right. We all know what Vance did was wrong. And I don't care if he's rich or powerful. That doesn't make it okay. I'm with Billy. The horse stays." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Sarah Chun stepped forward. "I'm with them too." Old Man Miller moved to join them. "And me?" One by one, people stepped forward. Not everyone. There were still plenty who looked uncomfortable, who exchanged nervous glances and stayed back. But enough. Enough to matter. Martha watched from the edge of the ring, and Billy could swear he saw tears glinting in her fierce old eyes. Harlan Vance heard about the market demonstration within hours. Miguel told him, his voice hesitant, clearly uncertain how the boss would react. The whole town was there, boss. And the kid, he was incredible with the horse. Got her doing things I've never seen from a horse recovering from that kind of injury. Harlan stood in his office, a luxurious room overlooking his vast ranch, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of rolling pastures and hundreds of head of cattle. Certificates and trophies lined the walls, testament to decades of success. But right now, none of it felt like enough. And the town? Harlan asked quietly. What was their reaction? They were on his side. Not all of them, but a lot. Even some of your own employees were talking about it at the bunkhouse, saying maybe we were wrong to dump the horse. Harlan turned from the window, his expression unreadable. Wrong. They think I was wrong. Boss, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but... Then don't. Harlan's voice was sharp. But after a moment, he sighed, suddenly looking older than his 50-something years. Go on. Say your piece. Miguel hesitated, then forged ahead. I've worked for you for 15 years. You've always been tough, but fair. But that horse, boss, we all knew she could have been saved. Doc Higgins said so himself. And the kid, Billy, he's done what we should have done. He saved her. At my expense. Is it though? Miguel met his boss's eyes. Is it really at your expense? Or is it just your pride that's hurt? Harlan stared at his foreman, and for a moment Miguel thought he might be fired on the spot. Then Harlan laughed, a short, bitter sound. You know what the ironic thing is? Harlan said, walking to his desk and opening a bottom drawer. He pulled out an old photograph, faded and creased from years of handling. This is me. 45 years ago. Miguel took the photo. It showed a young boy, maybe 10 or 11, wearing clothes that were clearly too big for him. He was standing next to a horse, a scrawny thing, all ribs and dull coat. But the look on the boy's face was pure determination. I was dirt poor, Harlan continued. Father was a drunk who ran off when I was 8. Mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I found that horse at an auction. Owner said she was bound for the glue factory. I had $17 I'd saved from collecting bottles. I bought her with that money. Harlan took the photo back, studying it with distant eyes. Her name was Daisy. Took me 2 years, but I rehabilitated her, trained her, turned her into a working cow horse. Sold her for $500, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. That was my start. That $500 became 1,000, became 5,000, became everything you see here. He set the photo down carefully on his desk. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what it was like to be that kid. I forgot what it feels like when the whole world tells you you're not worth anything. I built this empire by making hard decisions, by never letting sentiment cloud my judgment. And I convinced myself that was strength. He looked at Miguel. But maybe it's just the thing I tell myself so I can sleep at night. 3 days later, Harlan's truck pulled up in front of Martha's house. Billy saw it from the paddock where he was working with Hope and felt his stomach drop. This was it. Harlan had come to take her away. But when Harlan stepped out of the truck, he wasn't accompanied by ranch hands or lawyers. He was alone. And he wasn't wearing his usual business attire, just worn jeans and a simple work shirt, his Stetson shading his eyes from the afternoon sun. Billy straightened, positioning himself between Harlan and Hope out of instinct. Martha emerged from her house, her cane in hand, her expression wary. "Harlan," she said coolly, "come to cause more trouble?" "Actually, I came to talk. If you'll hear me out." Martha and Billy exchanged glances. Then Martha gestured to her porch. "Talk then." They sat in an awkward semicircle. Billy on the porch steps, Hope tied loosely nearby, Martha in her rocking chair, and Harlan perched uncomfortably on the porch rail. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Harlan cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology. Both of you." He looked at Billy. "You were right about what I did. It was wrong. I could dress it up in business language, in pragmatism and tough decisions. But at the end of the day, I abandoned an animal who trusted me. That's not ranching. That's cowardice." Billy said nothing, too shocked to respond. "I've been thinking a lot this past week," Harlan continued, "about who I used to be versus who I've become, about what success costs when you measure it only in dollars and acres." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I can't undo what I did, but I'd like to try to make it right." "How?" Martha's voice was skeptical. Harlan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. He handed it to Billy, who opened it with trembling hands. It was a bill of sale. For one chestnut quarter horse mare, registered name, Vance's Hope. The buyer was listed as William Billy Thornton. The price, $1. "I'm signing her over to you," Harlan said. "Legally. She's yours if you want her." Billy stared at the document, unable to process what he was seeing. But I can't. I don't have anywhere to keep her. I don't even have a home." "About that." Harlan looked uncomfortable, like the next words were costing him something. "I've been talking to Doc Higgins and some other folks in town. They reminded me that I have more resources than I could ever use. So I'm proposing something." He pulled out another document. This one a property deed. "There's a piece of land about 2 miles from here. 30 acres. Old homestead that's been sitting vacant for years. It's got a barn, a small house that needs work, and good grazing. I'm willing to deed it to a non-profit foundation. We'd call it Hope's Crossing Animal Sanctuary. Its mission would be to provide shelter and rehabilitation for abandoned or injured animals, and to provide work and housing for young people who need a second chance." Martha's eyes narrowed. "And who would run this sanctuary?" "I was hoping you would, Martha. You've got the knowledge, the experience. And Billy here has already proven he's got the dedication." Harlan looked at Billy. "If you're willing, you could be the first resident. Learn the ranching trade properly. Maybe eventually help run the place." Billy's head was spinning. "I don't understand. Why would you do this?" "Because 45 years ago, someone gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it. An old rancher named Jack Pritchard hired me on, taught me everything he knew, treated me like I mattered when no one else did." Harlan's voice was thick with memory. "When Jack died, he left me a small piece of his ranch. Said every man deserves a foundation to build on. I took that foundation and built an empire. But somewhere along the way, I forgot Jack's real lesson, that what we build only matters if it helps others build too." He stood up, holding out the documents to Billy. "I can't give you back your childhood, Billy. Can't undo whatever circumstances left you on your own. But I can give you this. A chance. A foundation. The rest is up to you." Billy took the documents with shaking hands, his eyes blurring with tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take care of her," Harlan said, nodding toward Hope. "Say you'll build something good out of what I nearly destroyed." "I will," Billy whispered. "I promise." Martha stood up, studying Harlan with an expression Billy couldn't quite read. Then she extended her hand. "I'll run your sanctuary, Harlan Vance. But I'm going to hold you to this. No backing out. No changing your mind when the bills come in." "I wouldn't dream of it." Harlan shook her hand firmly. "I'll have my lawyers draw up the proper paperwork. The foundation will have an endowment, enough to keep it running for decades." He turned to leave, then paused at the porch steps. "Billy, that horse of yours, she's special. She's got good bloodlines, good bone structure. With proper training, she could be an excellent therapy horse. Calm disposition, good with people." He smiled slightly. "Just a thought for the future." As Harlan's truck drove away, Billy sat in stunned silence. the documents still clutched in his hands. Hope wandered over, drawn by his stillness, and rested her head on his shoulder. "Did that just happen?" Billy asked Martha. Martha was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. A real laugh, full of genuine joy. "Yes, Billy. It just happened. Miracles sometimes do, if you're stubborn enough to believe in them." The next 6 months passed in a blur of work and transformation. The old homestead Harlan had deeded to the foundation was in rougher shape than he'd let on. The barn roof had holes, the fences were falling down, and the house looked like it might collapse if you sneezed too hard. But Billy, Martha, and a rotating crew of volunteers from town threw themselves into renovation with fierce determination. Tommy showed up the first weekend with his father and a truckload of lumber. "Figured you could use some help," he said, then added with a sheepish grin. "Plus, I owe you. For being a jerk." "You don't owe me anything," Billy replied. "Maybe not, but I want to help anyway." "That okay?" It was more than okay. By the end of that first weekend, Billy had made his first real friend. Others followed. Sarah Chun organized a fundraiser at her store, collecting donations for fencing materials and tools. Old Man Miller offered his expertise in barn construction, showing up every Saturday morning with coffee and advice. Even some of Harlan's own ranch hands volunteered their time, helping dig post holes and repair the irrigation system. The work was backbreaking, but Billy had never been happier. Every board hammered into place, every fence post cemented into the ground, every room in the little house made livable. It all felt like he was building not just a sanctuary, but a future. Hope recovered fully. Her leg healed clean and strong, and under Martha's guidance, Billy began training her properly. Not for competition or ranch work, but as Martha had envisioned, as a therapy horse. "She's got the temperament for it," Martha explained as they worked Hope in the round pen. "Patient, calm, intuitive. Some horses just seem to understand when someone's hurting. Hope's one of them." They tested Martha's theory when a local woman named Rebecca brought her 6-year-old daughter Emma to the sanctuary. Emma had been in a car accident that left her with severe anxiety and a fear of loud noises. She was withdrawn, barely speaking even to her own mother. Billy wasn't sure what to expect when he led Hope into the small arena where Emma waited. The girl was tiny, fragile-looking, clutching her mother's hand with white-knuckled intensity. "This is Hope," Billy said gently, stopping a few feet away. "She's very gentle. Would you like to say hello?" Emma didn't respond, just stared at the horse with wide, frightened eyes. But Hope did something remarkable. The mare lowered her head to Emma's level, then took one slow step forward, then another, moving with exquisite care, as if she understood that this small human needed gentleness. When Hope was close enough, she extended her nose toward Emma, breathing softly. The girl's grip on her mother's hand loosened slightly. Then, moving with the caution of someone approaching a wild animal, Emma reached out and touched Hope's muzzle. Hope stood perfectly still, her ears pricked forward in gentle attention. Emma stroked the mare's nose once, twice. Then, for the first time in months according to her mother, she smiled. "She's soft," Emma whispered. Billy felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Yeah, she is." That was the first of many sessions. Emma came twice a week, and each time she seemed a little less frightened, a little more present. Hope seemed to understand her role, moving with extra care around the girl, tolerating her uncertain touches and sudden movements with infinite patience. "This is what it's all about," Martha said one afternoon, watching Emma actually giggle as Hope nuzzled her pocket looking for treats. "This is what makes it all worthwhile." The official opening of Hope's Crossing Animal Sanctuary happened on a crisp October morning, 6 months after Harlan's unexpected offer. The sanctuary now housed Hope and 3 other horses, rescues from various situations of neglect or abandonment. There were also 2 goats, a small flock of chickens, and a 3-legged dog named Lucky that someone had found dumped on the highway. Billy had turned 13 2 weeks earlier, a birthday celebrated with a cake Sarah Chun had baked and a party thrown by Martha on the sanctuary grounds. It was the first birthday party he could ever remember having, and he'd cried when they sang Happy Birthday, overwhelmed by the sheer fact of being seen, being celebrated, being loved. The opening ceremony was attended by what seemed like the entire town. Harlan Vance cut the ribbon himself, standing beside Billy and Martha, looking uncomfortable with the attention but determined to see it through. This sanctuary exists because of a boy's courage and an old woman's wisdom, Harlan said in his speech. It exists because a community came together to say that compassion matters more than profit, that second chances are worth giving, and that no life, human or animal, should be considered disposable. He paused, looking at Billy with something that might have been pride. My hope is that this place will stand as a reminder of those values, and that it will help many others the way it's already helped me, by teaching us to be better than we thought we could be. After the ceremony, as people milled about touring the facilities and meeting the animals, Doc Higgins pulled Billy aside. Got something for you, the old veterinarian said, handing Billy an envelope. It's from the county 4-H club. They're offering you a full scholarship to their horsemanship program. Includes everything: training, competition fees, equipment. Martha thought you might be interested. Billy opened the envelope with trembling hands, reading the letter inside. A scholarship. A real educational opportunity. Another door opening. I don't know what to say, he managed. Say yes, Doc Higgins advised. You've got a gift with horses, Billy. Would be a shame not to develop it properly. Billy found Martha in the barn, checking on one of the newer rescues, a bay gelding who'd been seized from a hoarding situation. She looked up as he approached, her sharp eyes taking in his expression. Doc Higgins talked to you, she guessed. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to receive it as what it is, an achievement you earned, not a favor someone did for you. She straightened, one hand on her perpetually aching back. You've worked harder than anyone I've ever trained, Billy. You've got a natural feel for horses, the kind of intuition that can't be taught. That scholarship isn't charity. It's recognition. Billy looked around the barn, at the clean stalls, the organized tack room, the horses munching peacefully on their hay. 6 months ago, this had all been a dream so distant it seemed impossible. Now it was real. Solid. His. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. For teaching me. For believing in me. For nothing. Martha interrupted firmly. You did the work. I just pointed you in the right direction. She paused, her expression softening slightly. Though I suppose I should thank you too. For reminding an old woman that she still has something to offer. That the work isn't done yet. They stood in companionable silence for a moment. Then Martha nodded toward the door. Come on. Your public awaits. And hope needs to be shown off properly. I saw at least 3 people asking about therapy horse programs. As they walked back outside into the sunshine, Billy spotted Hope in the arena, surrounded by a small group of children. Tommy was there, helping to supervise, showing the younger kids how to approach the mare safely. Hope stood calmly in the center of the attention, seeming to enjoy the gentle pats and shy questions. Emma was there too, no longer clutching her mother's hand. She was brushing Hope's mane, chatting softly to the mare about something Billy couldn't hear. But he could see her face, bright with joy and confidence she'd been missing for so long. Billy felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find Harlan standing beside him. You've built something special here, Harlan said quietly. Something that matters. We've built it, Billy corrected. It wouldn't exist without you. Maybe, but it wouldn't mean anything without you. Harlan was quiet for a moment, watching the scene in the arena. You know what the best part is? I get to see what I almost destroyed become something beautiful. That's a rare gift, a chance to witness your own redemption. Do you regret it? Billy asked. What you did before. Every single day, Harlan admitted. But regret without action is just self-pity. So instead, I choose to do better. To be better. He smiled slightly. A lesson a 12-year-old boy taught me, much to my embarrassment. 13, Billy corrected with a small grin. I'm 13 now. My apologies. A 13-year-old boy. Harlan extended his hand. Thank you, Billy, for saving more than just a horse. Billy shook his hand, feeling the weight of everything that simple gesture represented. Forgiveness. Second chances. The possibility that people could change, could grow, could become more than their worst moments. That evening, after the guests had gone and the work was done, Billy sat on the porch of his little house, with his name on actual legal documents, and watched Hope graze in the pasture. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. Martha joined him, settling into the rocking chair with a satisfied groan. Long day, she observed. Good day, though. Very good day. She was quiet for a moment. Then, you know, Caleb used to say that horses are proof that God believes in second chances. They're prey animals, built to run from danger, to trust nothing. But give them patience and consistency, and they'll trust you with their lives. They'll carry your weight, work alongside you, become your partner. All because you chose to be worthy of that trust. Billy thought about that, about Hope and how far she'd come from that first night by the roadside. About how far he'd come too. Do you think we're all like that? He asked. Given enough patience and consistency, can anyone learn to trust again? Martha smiled. I think that's what we're all trying to figure out, Billy. Every single day, as darkness fell and the stars began to emerge, Billy felt something he'd never really experienced before, a sense of belonging, of home. Not just a place to sleep or hide, but something deeper, a foundation to build on, just like Harlan had said. Hope wandered over to the fence, nickering softly. Billy stood and went to her, running his hands along her neck, feeling the strength and vitality that had returned to her body. We made it, girl, he whispered. Both of us. We made it. The mare bumped his chest gently with her nose, her dark eyes reflecting the emerging stars. In that moment, Billy understood what Martha and Harlan had been trying to tell him. It wasn't just about saving a horse or building a sanctuary. It was about proving that broken things could heal, that abandoned things could find home, that even in the harshest landscape, hope could take root and grow. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more animals to care for, more work to be done, more lessons to learn. But tonight, standing under the vast Texas sky with a horse who'd become his family and a community that had become his home, Billy allowed himself to simply be grateful. For second chances. For stubborn old women who saw potential where others saw only trouble. For wealthy men who learned to see past their pride. For small towns that remembered how to pull together. For therapy that happened on four legs with a gentle heart. And most of all, for a chestnut mare named Hope who'd taught him that sometimes being saved means learning how to save someone else.